These challenges demand our collective attention, and now more than ever, we cannot afford to be passive observers. We have to participate. Active citizenry holds the key to unlocking the tremendous potential residing within each and every one of us. There's always potential, and sometimes we don't use it or we don't even recognize it. It is a force that propels us forward towards a positive change, social cohesion, and sustainable development. By actively engaging with our communities, we build a strong sense of ownership and accountability. We empower individuals to actively participate in decision-making processes that shape their own lives and the future of our nation. We have ordinary citizens who represent them, apart from their chosen political parties. Civil society is best placed to represent the aspirations of ordinary citizens. Now, if civil society is not active, or sometimes wishes to be active, but it's not empowered, it's problematic, because an inactive civil society means that there is nobody holding government, now I'm saying government, to account. That's why there is this partnership. In governance, there is a partnership of government, civil society, business, ordinary citizens, and so on. Business leaders have an especially influential role to play in this endeavor. By embracing the principles of corporate social responsibility, businesses can create a profound impact in investing in programs of education, programs of job creation, programs of community empowerment, and all those programs that assist ordinary citizens to uplift them from where they are into a better position. When businesses actively contribute to the upliftment of society, they not only create economic value, but also address social inequalities and enhance the well-being of the nation. Civil society, again, remember, civil society is at the coalface with their grassroots presence and extensive networks, possess the power to mobilize communities, advocate for marginalized and channel the energy of active citizens. Maybe now I'm repeating myself, but I have to stress this to say, strong civil society, active civil society uplifts ordinary citizens into participation. And we hope that business and government can get together and participate in that upliftment. Today we convene for the breakfast seminar. Let us take advantage of this unique opportunity to share insights. We have experts here who will share insights and best practices. Let us engage in meaningful dialogue, fostering all collaborations and partnerships that will enable us to achieve a prosperous, peaceful, equitable, and just society. One wishes that is a possibility. We hope that is a possibility. As we delve into the discussions today, we must be guided by the profound words of Nelson Mandela that say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is the difference we have made in the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. Let us remember that our success as a nation hinges upon our ability to uplift the most vulnerable amongst us and create a society that leaves no one behind. In conclusion, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to each one of you that is here and those who are online, who have joined us online, for your presence here today. Your commitment to the betterment of South Africa is truly commendable. Together, let us revitalize civil society and embrace active citizenry as a means to create a brighter future for all. Thank you, and we look forward to an insightful discussion ahead today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair Mankoni Ntsaba, for your remarks, much appreciated. And now We are going to go straight into our panel discussion, but first let me introduce them and call them up the stage. And let me call you Dr. Darion Buckley of the Gauteng Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs as the HOD. If you can please take your seat there. He is a highly accomplished and astute executive with 25 years of experience in the private and public sectors, including public entities. He joined the department from the Gauteng office of the Premier, where he worked as the Deputy Director General for Corporate Management, responsible for the strategic, financial, operational, and administrative functions. Thanks for agreeing to be with us this morning. And Ms. Tessa Dooms is joining us as a trustee of Kagiso Trust. She's also director of Jasoro Consulting, a newly established development consultancy that provides organizations with services on policy, programming, and organizational strategies toward the development of Africa. And she has 15 years of experience as a development worker, trainer, and researcher with expertise on governance, youth development, and innovation. She has successfully led a policy think tank called Youth Lab and has lectured at 3 South African universities. She's also on the board of the Kagiso Trust. She holds a Master's of Sociology from the University of the Witwatersrand. Already on the stage, welcome, Tessa. Mr. John Matutle, panelist, he's co-founder of Time to Rise SA. He is co-founder and vision bearer of Time to Rise SA, a dynamic movement seeking to mobilize communities, civil societies, and religious organizations to play a collaborative and meaningful role in transforming communities and for nation building. He's an ordained pastor with a great passion to see communities transformed through dialogue and active citizenry. He's also the founder of Tolo Family Consulting, where they support disadvantaged families. Welcome, Pastor. Mr. Sake Ntlabezo, panelist, program manager of the Makhanda Circle of Unity, is also with us here. He studied at Rhodes University, where he acquired a Bachelor of Arts with honors in the industrial and economic sociology. He's a former chief of staff at Equal Education, where he provided strategic support to the senior management and governance structures of the social movement. He's also served as a board member of the Equal Education Law Center, board of trustees, and the manager at the Makhanda Circle of Unity. And we'll be joined online by Mr. Rio Noluchungu, who is the Chief Officer for Cluster at Municipal Capabilities and Governance at the South African Local Government Association. He sits on the boards of the Local Government Sectoral Education and Training Authority and the National Fund for Municipal Workers. Previously, he has worked in various capacities for organizations such as the Airports Company of South Africa, the Department of Public Works, eThekwini Municipality, and the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. And he's also been an independent management consultant in the process. One other panelist could not make it with us, but I would like to acknowledge that he had accepted the invitation. He's not feeling well, but I'm mentioning him because he was going to be a very important contributor on the basis of the experience that they have at the Midval, which is regarded as one of the better managed municipalities in Gauteng in particular, but I suppose is up there with the best of them in the country. So Mr. Anton Groenewald, I'm just acknowledging that you couldn't make it, but we were looking forward to your contributions. And of course, you are here, you are going to make a contribution as well. I'm going to open up the discussions so that we can hear from you what your views are regarding the situation we find ourselves in. So I'm going right ahead as I go to my chair, to my seat, or should I ask questions from here? Well, either way, I suppose it works. Since you're coming from outside the system, as it were, Dademruti, let me start with you. I know what our intentions are today is to look at the trajectory that we're at and cast our eyes ahead and say, what kind of governance at municipal level, Madam Chairperson, I think we should firstly acknowledge the situation we find ourselves in before we start talking about where we're going. So my question to you, Ntate Mruti Matutle, is what, from your point of view and other civil societies organizations, do you think the state of governance at municipal level is in South Africa at this time?
Thank you so much, Program Director, and also Kagiso Trust for having me to be part of this panel. It is quite an honor and privilege to be able to contribute. I think we will all agree that when we look at the government or the governance in South Africa as a whole, the brunt of the failure or the brokenness is actually felt at the local level, where you have your communities and where you have your local government. And this is something now that is calling for, according to my experience and what we have also experienced in my own local government, a collaboration where the community and the municipality and also the business sector must come together to provide the solutions that can turn the whole thing around. And I really believe that we don't have enough time now. We don't even have 5 years, because if something is not done now, I don't think that we will be able to turn it around. It will actually take us many years. So the time is now that we need to have this kind of dialogue, but it must not just be a dialogue, but it must be an active dialogue that is backed up by tangible actions that needs to take place, especially on the local level.
Thank you, Dr. Mruti. Just on a housekeeping matter, if we can run the timer here, because it is not running at the moment. So I'd like to see where we are time-wise. And then we take it from there. Thank you. Rio, Dr. Rio, I hope you can hear us. Are you there?
I can hear you, Tim.
Yes, I can. Thank you for joining us. You are in the thick of things as SALGA. You are in charge of the municipalities. Where are we now? What are your challenges within the governance of municipalities? And what do you see as key issues that need to be addressed for us going forward? If we want to see a change and want to see improvement in the setup, where should we start, you think?
Thank you, Tim, for having me, as well as to the Kagiso Trust team for inviting us as SALGA to have to share our perspective in this dialogue. Obviously, the municipalities, in the view of SALGA, are pretty much a mixed bag of performance. You do not have to look far in terms of reporting and in terms of the experiences of citizens. Am I still audible, Tim?
Yeah, go ahead. We're listening to you.
You don't have to look far in terms of reporting, such as the municipal audit outcomes, the experiences of citizens, and through media reporting, that the most of the focus is on the dysfunctionality that you see in a lot of the municipality. And yet the reality also points to other municipalities that are performing reasonably well on the governance, on the financial front, as well as in other respects. But it's important to also acknowledge from a point of view of SALGA as an association of municipalities and as an organization that is sitting at the pinnacle of this important sector that's closest to the people, that we still need to do a lot to change the face of local government, change the face of its reputation, its credibility to citizens, seek to help municipalities to close the distance between themselves and the citizens that they serve, but also to make municipalities the real engines of development, as the Constitution had envisaged their responsibility to be in a in a democratic dispensation of our cooperative governance system. So indeed, we acknowledge those challenges, but we feel those challenges are within our realm of resolution. We need ethical leadership. We need people that are in this business to serve people, put people first, as long as those interests do not supersede the constitutional imperatives of the system, as well as our responsibility towards serving people. We think we can make the necessary changes that will see a local government system that is forever improving by the day, and that one that meets with the trust and the credibility of the citizens that they are established to serve. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Rio. Dr. Darren Buckley, you are also in the thick of things, practically speaking, providing municipal oversight and support, and that's a key focus area for the province. But is it working in the context of Gauteng? I'm talking about oversight and support.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you for Kagiso Trust to invite us to this dialogue. Yes, Tim, I think if we go to how we monitor municipalities, there is systems of reporting. Each municipality has a system of financial management, governance, leadership. But in the end, you ask the question, how robust is the activities that we as a department are undertaking? Whilst the system of engagement is very robust, you often ask yourselves, is the municipalities geared, are they built, are they capacitated to deliver on local service delivery? And if you go back in a period of time, 5, 6 years, you can see how that capacity over a period of time has been eroded. And that goes to the heart of what the AG said. When the AG outlines in the reports what is the problems at the pinnacle level in local government, it says it goes down to leadership. And of course, the emergence of coalition governments have not made it easy. I often call coalition governments, I say it's a shotgun marriage. You would go into bed with somebody that you would never go into bed with. What happens is you have 7 political parties, for argument's sake. You need 50 plus 1 to govern that particular municipality. You have political parties that 3 or 4 that gets to 49.5%. You get one person that says, I have the 0.8% to give you what you need to govern. They do govern, but that person with 0.8%, with a minority decision making in that area, becomes the majority decision maker in the coalition government. Because then person would then say, I now want to become the mayor because I made you to govern. And the first point of call is, can we change the municipal manager? Can we change the executive management? Currently, the heart of the problem is also leadership in terms of senior management. Looking at where the municipalities are, if we don't build that capacity, we're not going to improve service delivery. So, problems in city of Tshwane, for instance, if you want to go there, 90% of senior management positions are vacant. If you compare that to Midvaal, they have 75% people appointed at senior management level. There's 3 vacancies. So it shows, if you ask the AG, what is it like to audit Ekurhuleni, Midvaal, and what is it like to audit Joburg, Tshwane, or any other municipality? The AG would tell you one thing. We have presented our audit strategy. By the time we come in, the documents are available for audit. That you can see there's governance in that municipality. But once they cannot meet the time frame for 3 days to submit documentation that you were supposed to keep for a year for the audit, it shows the dysfunctionality. So it's going to be a long way for us to get a municipality to stabilization. Local government is an independent sphere of government. So your interference, your oversight, there needs to be a clear line of separation when it comes to those. You need to get involved, you need to exercise oversight, and the Constitution says government shall support municipalities. But if there is continuous challenges in that municipality, at what point do you say now it is time for decisive intervention? We've seen what happened in the past. We have implemented Section 139, where a municipality has been placed under administration. I don't know how involved are you in local government, but we need to look at case studies. How well did we do when we have placed the municipality under administration? Has it worked for us? Is the municipality better off? And what else? But the first point of call is, can we get the right leadership in? Can we train our councillors to make sure we do understand the separation of power within politics and then administration? I think let me stop there.
Thanks very much, Darren. Tessa, civil society seems to be on the margins in the main. I suppose in communities where people are not organized properly, and all we see is service delivery protests, and that's about it. And then people go back, not much improves, go back. We know which municipalities are working and not working, but one does not get a sense that civil society has got influence on improving the situation. What's your?
Thanks, Tim. So the problem isn't whether civil society has influence or not. It's whether even voters and citizens in general have influence or not. And the way we have set up our political culture in this country has centered the political party over all else. So what the political party says is what goes for all levels of government in all ways. And this is contrary to both the idea of a democracy, which is supposed to be participatory, not only on election day for citizens and civil society, but throughout, throughout the governing period. But what we've done is we've reduced that to tick box exercises. So, you have to hold an IDP meeting. It's so easy for a political party to pass somebody in to an IDP meeting. All you need to do is fill in registration forms or forms to show people were there, and then you can tick box that exercise. The lack of organizing in communities is around the lack of information. So we don't have central, transparent information about what's happening in municipalities at any given time, about what processes are happening, what votes are happening in council. All of those things are very opaque. They're not front and center for citizens to be able to access on their own terms, and political parties and political party bosses particularly are gatekeeping even at that level. And I think with local government, particularly in an area of coalitions, and I do want to address the question of coalitions, but local government is a prime way to remind ourselves that our entire system, when we chose multi-party democracy, we chose a democracy that wasn't just about the governance of one party. We are not a first past the post system. And so the idea that we need a political party or one political party that is dominant and governs and everything goes through that political party, or that even political parties themselves, even if it's more than one, are the core arbiters, goes against fundamentally democracy in broad terms, but definitely multi-party democracy. And so I'm going to say two controversial things in this opening thing, and then I'll move on. The first is that
Kato Tess, I think you touched on it very well, is that we must also be quite frank in saying that a lot of those structures, those systems, those acts, those policies, those protocols, profoundly opaque and inaccessible to the very same people that put the custodians of them in office. And that's a very confusing irony that we seem to have normalized in the world, that the power of the voter exists in only opening the door and no more. We open the door for people to come in and nothing else happens beyond that. And at that point, it's almost as if these structures allow people in office to become their own watchdogs. They are the watchmen of themselves. When it gets difficult and tough questions are asked, we're referred to acts that are either hard to access or not yet translated or made popularly accessible to the mass. And that's something that's quite difficult to then reconcile in the space of trying to harness and shape this collaborative energy, because there's an unspoken power differential here. There are structural systems in place that make it difficult for me to engage with you on the same level. That being said, it's not all doom and gloom. We've had moments where we've seen partners come together, schools and nonprofit organizations, the education sector in particular, have really taken a very deliberate energy to join part of this growing movement. And I suspect that in time, it's the type of model that can really start to shape itself and grow. It does require time and investment and be expanded in different spaces. At its heart, though, is the idea of what is the commonality of purpose? Can we commit to it outside of our individual parts? And how do we move things forward? But what has to be the inclusion of the state and government actors. They can't act outside of it. They can't be a response to it. They can't even be on the receiving end of interventions. They have to co-create with civil society and the citizens. Without that element of co-creation, we run the risk then of always creating this thing where we kept a hand away from the solution and 10 steps away from moving forward. And that's a very difficult place to keep dancing around because it just runs you dry.
Well, Dr. Dorian Berkeley, I'm going back to you now. You mentioned something about 90% of positions at senior level within the metro, Botswana metro, not being filled, those vacancies standing empty for some time. That's the capital of South Africa, right? The government of South Africa operates from there. It's got a substantial population, substantial budgets. Why is this situation allowed to continue, and what can be done to improve, not only Tshwane, but everywhere else where positions are standing unfilled, and everybody can take their time filling those positions?
I must also say, in the context of monitoring those municipalities, it's not because of a lack of trying. I think even all municipalities, with Tsani, with the case in point, have made efforts to fill these positions. But let's go to the heart of why it remains vacant. You start a process, and remember, when a position becomes vacant, there is an approval process to advertise the position. It goes through a system, the position gets advertised. Once it closes, there is a committee that's established by council. And once the committee has been established, there is a process where the shortlists are done, it's approved, and then you can now interview. Just before the interview process, there is a motion of no confidence. The mayor gets removed. When the mayor gets removed, what does that mean? It means the entire mayoral committee changes. So that mayoral committee would then feel that the candidates that have been proposed, it's probably linked to the former mayor. So we now restart the process. The Municipal Systems Act, the Municipal Structures Act provides time frames for the advertisement. So you cannot just place an advertisement on the website. Very media. So in 15 days pass, there is a shortlisting process. Because of the challenges that you have with background verification, security, you do some of those checks in advance. You do not want to, when you get, I'm sitting with South Africa's most wanted criminal. So you start some of those processes in advance. If there is another change, that process gets restarted. And that is primarily the problem.
Sure.
And I don't think we should insulate the administration from the politics, because otherwise you're not going to improve service delivery. And now we are asking municipal managers, they are now being held accountable to account to COPTA why these positions have not been filled. And we are looking at other measures that can hold them accountable so that these can be expedited.
Well, I suppose this is a matter of concern to Salga. Rio Noluchungu, please tell us, what is Salga doing to deal with this particular challenge of not being able to attract the right people and, of course, the everyday issues, political issues of votes of no confidence starting all over again? If you don't mind, if you can just tell us, what is the prevailing situation across the nation in terms of finding the right people that are fit for purpose and appointing them?
Yes, indeed, the challenge team does exist. And in part, it does exist because they are identified a set of skills that are critical for a municipality to function and deliver. And those skills are to be found at both technical levels as well as in your senior managerial levels. You would know, and Kagiso Trust would also know, that flowing from our observation of this problem and the new phenomenon of coalition governments that has started becoming pronounced in our political discourse at a local level, we've set about as Salga to drive a program of professionalization, to accept that the reality of our local governance system is that there's always going to be elected representatives that are coming to the system either through political parties or in their independent capacities. Ours is to create an environment where all pillars of professionalization become embedded in the system, from ensuring that leadership exercises its responsibility ethically and responsibly, from ensuring that the managers are themselves licensed professionals as they enter the system, as they also stay in the system in line with the nature of their contractual regime. Again, we also want professional bodies to start becoming embedded in the system, that they get recognized, that they also play a role in monitoring the conduct and the morality and the practices that you see in the system, including ensuring that they also an additional layer of helping in drawing skills to local government and ensuring that the local government has a discernible employee value proposition and over time attains its rightful place as an employer of choice. We've also made sure that that doesn't end there. The citizens become players in the system and they don't become players in a very on the one hand they are voters, on the one hand they are consumers of municipal services, on the other hand they also participate in organized formations like the Cognizant Trust, but they are also champions of certain needs that the municipalities prioritize in the ITPs, and we think we need a greater appreciation of the role
Okay. Well, Rio, let's
citizens can play, so that this business of local government becomes the business. Yes.
All right, thank you. And Date Matuse, listening to what we've discussed now up to this point, and there are several issues anyway that came up in the collaborative radical collaboration series, the campaign that and the discussions we've had. One of them is professionalization. One wonders why we seem to be stuck with this problem, not only that of appointing people, but of getting the right people fit for purpose in those positions. In 5 years, is this something that we can overcome, we can change, and if so, how?
Yeah. Tim, I think the problem actually emanates even from the voters at the level of the community, where you see the community, even when it comes to the elections and electing leaders that must represent them, that there seems to be a lack of identifying competent leaders from that level. And the kind of people that you find occupying those positions or even seats within the council that has to oversee the process of appointing even competent people, professional people in the municipality. Most of them themselves are not competent. And if you have a situation where you've got politicians who are not competent even doing their work, you cannot have an expectation for those politicians also, to have a capacity to appoint competent people in those positions in terms of running of the municipality. So I think there's something that needs to change there, and this is a process. It's not going to be a hit and run, where the civil society now comes in, where the civil society can empower communities to say, what kind of leaders from that grassroots level, what kind of leaders must actually represent you in the council? Because if you get the wrong guys, because this guy can speak aloud and this guy, he's got the most, he's making the most noise, but he doesn't have a substance, then you're also going to sit with a problem where you're not going to have those services coming through. And I think that's actually where we can start. And once we get that in place, then we will be able, because if you get competent people in the council level, meaning that the guy who will also become a mayor will be somebody who is also very competent. And that is the person that will make sure and give an oversight that what kind of professional people and competent people we need to put in these positions. So it is solely a responsibility also of the voters. And if we can change that and empower communities, I think we will have a different outcome.
Nsake, what do you think? I mean, there are several issues wrapped up in this question, right? What kind of change do we think we will see in 5 years? Whether it be appointing the right people, professionalizing, and getting civil society and communities involved. Are we likely to get there, given where we are?
I'm going to start by saying something that some might find uncomfortable, but it's the most honest thing I can say, and that's I don't know. I have a couple of thoughts, but I don't know. I think context really matters about the specificity of the challenge being faced at a local government election. I'm hearing what John was saying right now, and I think part of it, it goes deeper. It really goes into the system and the systemic challenges within the institutions of local governance. What are the mechanisms and structures set up to governance? Who makes decisions? Why they make the decisions? When do they tell us about the decisions? How do they report back, et cetera, et cetera? You can change the people as many times as you want, but if the institutional culture is rooted in something beyond the people, it continues to exist, and it adjusts and shifts and grows and morphs, much like capitalism does in the changing economy of the world. So I think part of a systemic change, part of a meaningful change, has to look at the structural system. It's something that Tessa alluded to a lot in her opening remarks, the structural system that allows local governance to take place. Yes, voter education is very important. Yes, we need to really push out and increase voter numbers and present meaningful and viable alternatives. But we also need to enable and ensure that in the presentation of alternatives, in the encouragement of people to vote and participate in the electoral system, they are able to put forward people into a system that is responsive to the context and not responsive to compliance. On many occasions, we hear stories of local and provincial and national-wide entities running strategic documents and plans, and they consult purely for the point of being able to say, we consulted, never fully shaping something that's quite responsive to the specificity of the time, the place, and the challenges right then. And that in and of itself is, I think, partly informed by how the system and the structure of the institutional culture enables that kind of behavior. So I think to accompany your answer, sir, we have to look at the type of mechanisms and protocols in place. We have to look at what is the system that an up-and-coming bargaining leader lands into, and is it the type of one that can allow him to really deepen his ethics and his approach to ethical leadership, or will survival be premised on buying into what's already there in place?
Sure.
And if that continues to persist, I fear, and this is why I started with I don't know, I fear we might find ourselves running in circles.
Well, Tessa, thanks very much, Zake. 5 years trajectory. You identified numerous issues earlier in your opening remarks, and I must say they made me feel like I shouldn't talk about 5 years. I should talk about an unknown future, but it was there. It was a question I was going to ask, that 5 years down the line, given the trajectory of where we are, and let's go back to the culture, including the issues that you raised of transforming municipal cultures to be purpose-driven, people to conduct themselves in an appropriate way to serve the purpose of why local governments exist in the first place. What do you think? Where do we start? How do we go about it?
5 years is too far.
5 years is too far?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So how do you think it's going to look like in less than 5 years then?
So there are a few things that need to happen in the next 3 years. I mean, we are staring down the barrel actually of the next municipal election in less than 3 years, well, around about that time. The first thing is we need to fix the question about the politicization of the bureaucracy. And that we can do in this current term, right? And the politicization of the bureaucracy is one about the question of those systems being de-linked from the politicians, so that the circus of the politicians does not stop necessary processes either for hiring or service delivery. In other countries in the world, especially where coalition governments are normative, you could have up to 6-month periods of no political leadership that is installed while they broker their negotiations, and you still have a fully functioning bureaucracy. It cannot be that for those 6 months, no one can be hired or fired. So we can start doing the work of delinking, and I think the next national government election has everything to do with fixing the local government problem. One of the big issues that we must fight for in the next national election is a COCTA strategy. Whoever takes up national needs to fix COCTA and needs to fix the ways in which our spheres of government work, and particularly some of the policy and legislative issues that are happening that are hindering local government from working in a depoliticized way. The second thing is putting pressure on political parties to sanction people who interfere, politicians who interfere in the running of government and municipalities in particular. The idea that we are comfortable with senior leaders are going to come as political deployees has to stop. That has to be something that we say is an absolute no-no in the context that we are in. The reason why that's important is you cannot get good talented people who have experience and who have the will to do the work if they know they're going to have to do political favors. You're just not going to get it right. And so if we want to attract the right talent, it's not a matter of remuneration. I can tell you government remunerates well enough that you can get good talent to go there. It is literally just a matter of people not wanting to be at the behest of political masters, and we have to start to make that one of the things that we barter and trade our political power and our political influence around. There's two other things I want to raise quickly. One is when we talk about capacitating the state, and this happens at all levels of government, but particularly at local government, because we've now resigned ourselves to the deficits of poorly competent political leaders and poorly competent managers, we've now created the culture of outsourcing government's thinking work and outsourcing government's delivery work through consultants. We talk a lot about state capture. We talk a lot about service delivery issues, but we do not talk about the money that we lose in this country to consultants. The myriads and myriads of consultants who are doing actually the work of elected officials and of senior government managers. That needs to start being penalized in the system by the Auditor General. When all of the work that we're actually paying a salaried person to do is being done by a consultant, we are double paying for work when we could have just hired that same consultant to be the manager. There are things that we can do right now to change that. And then the final thing is about the juniorization of local government. I used to be a lecturer, and when I started lecturing, I was 22 years old, and I was told to go and teach first years. And I told all of my colleagues, this is wrong. Telling the most junior person to go and teach first years is wrong, because first year is foundational for students. And if I lay the foundations wrong because I don't have the experience or because I don't have the right knowledge, then it doesn't matter that they meet the professor when they're in masters. They'll have a poor background. We need our best leaders politically, our best managers technically at local government level. Because that means the best policy can be written there. But if the person implementing the program is somebody who is not competent, it won't matter. You can tinker all you want with legislation and policy at the highest levels with people with PhDs. If the PhD people are not sitting on the ground and are not actually designing the programs and implementing on the ground, none of it will matter. Let's turn it around.
Thanks, Tessa. Dr. Dorian Buckley, I think you should respond to that. She reckons 5 years is too far. Things must change within 3 years. Where I'm sitting, I doubt very much, but I wish it happens. You are within the system, possible or not?
You need to start small. And I think you need to start with the leadership. Desa is correct. If you look at all the reports of the AG, it tells you if the audit starts from the 1st of July, if that consultant has left the municipality 31st of March with 2 or 3 months down the line to the audit, there was such over-reliance on that consultant that there's no continuity. Maybe we should go back to where we were in the past. When you as a business unit wants to motivate or appoint a consultant, shouldn't you motivate to the accounting officer first to say that skills is not in the municipality, it's not part of the structure at this point, and that's why you motivate for it. As opposed to just preparing your terms of reference, it's something easy, you get somebody from outside and get the job done. But you need to start now. I think the Municipal Systems Act, the Municipal Structures Act have begun to shape how we need to appoint, and that sort of approvals that's required at council level, but concurrence from the relevant MEC with a clear set of information that should be submitted. If we can comply with that basic skills, we can get there. But I don't think, and I fully agree with Tessa, we shouldn't start with 5 years. We should start now. Those that's vacant, let's get the right skills in, let's get the right capacity in. And we know what happens when it gets to local government election, including elections at national and provincial level. A few months down the line, everybody just sits back. 2026 is around the corner. There is no way that you're not going to end up with a coalition government. The emergence of that is so strong that I guess it's going to continue. But we need to start now to make a difference.
Thanks very much. Well, let me thank the panelists for sharing their thoughts with us on the questions that we raised. Obviously, the intention is to say, we know to a large extent what the problems are, but we have the capacity and the will to fix them, to turn things around. So please give them a round of applause in appreciation for their input. But we're going to have a discussion with you in a short while. So I'm asking them to remain here with me on the podium. At this time, I would like to test or check how far you've been thinking about this topic that we've been discussing, right? We're setting up the Mentimeter now. I think that's what it is, Paul, Mentimeter, right? That just one way that you need to scan, I suppose, you need to scan the code, the QR code that's there on your tables, which will then allow you access to the Mentimeter, and then share with us the one word that comes to mind when you think of local government or municipalities and governance over the next 5 years that you think is a desirable end goal. What is it that will tell you that things are actually getting better? So just go through that process of scanning the QR code and then share with us the concept, the word that comes to mind when you think about how things will have improved for you, and we'll be putting it up here on the board, and let's see what our wishes and desires are.
Nyelet?
Hello?
Okay.
And this also goes to the members of the audience and other people who have joined us online. Please participate in this. The question is, in your opinion, there are two questions there. Okay, I see that it's changed now. There we go. What single word best describes the present state of active citizenry? Let's do that first, and then we'll come to the second one.
I've got the microphone.
Are we going to get the results now, or they'll come later? So we've got the first question. I think we can close that now and go to the second question. All right, let's check what responses we got, starting first with the one word that you think best describes the present state of active citizenry. We had 51 responses, which is good. But what is the consensus? Well, strong word that seems to be dominating here is disengaged. There's a bit of engaged. There's a bit of passive. Well, it's not a bit. There's passive. There's low, lackluster, non-engaging, poor, disarray, foresight in hindsight, inactive, radical, undemocratic, despair, non-existent, inadequate, superficial, entitlement, limping along, a mess. But at the end of the day, the big dominant word is disengaged. So there's room for improvement there. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Now let's look at your views regarding strategies that we can use to strengthen the role of citizens in local government. What do you think? Let's put it up. Can we get the responses, please? Well, for those who had not shared, please use this opportunity to do that. And then in a few minutes' time, we will be taking comments and questions from you. Oh, there we go. So far, we've got 15 responses. For those who have not responded, you can still go ahead. Let's take a look at what other views emerged, because we had about 51 responses earlier on, so we still can do more. One is inclusive collaboration, transparent, energetic leadership, and an empowering approach to action plans. Town hall meetings, WhatsApp groups, other social media platforms, educating community members about the function and role of local government as a foundation and encouraging agency participation in the local government process. Engaging the youth. The other citizens need to understand broader lived experiences and advocate. As I'm missing out a couple of words there. Having competent and honest politicians within local government will encourage citizens' participation. Greater communication with the citizens and their ability to participate through existing forums. participating in local meetings and community dialogues, reviewing the roles of the ward councillors and proper training for ward committees, empowering communities to take responsibility of their role in municipalities. Other ideas: holding seminars, webinars, restrict non-negotiable best practice, collaboration with public accountability, racial diversity and engagement. Okay, so we have seen this, right? And I think we'll share the outcomes of the Mentimeters with you after this session. But we are learning as we go along. We are learning as we share ideas and issues. I want to ask you to please indicate if you want to talk to us. But let me ask you, Tessa, specifically, because you came across very strong, forceful, and thinking that we can really fix things around and active citizenry could make things better. What could the people of Hammanskraal have done, for instance, regarding the poor provision of water to them? You know, the whole experience, as we know, is a highlight in a negative way of what is wrong with the municipalities. If I lived in Hammanskraal and I wanted to do something about it, what else could I have done?
Yeah, there are three words in civil society and activism that we must revive in the country: organize, mobilize, and conscientize. And I think we might actually have to start with the conscientize first. So the people of Hammanskraal needed to be able to get information about what the systems and processes are that they can tap into to know who is responsible, where are the budgets, what needed to be done, what had been promised that had not been delivered on. That conscientization process and the information gap that has existed there has demobilized people in that community. The second thing is to be able to organize yourself to create awareness about how other people can come in and support and assist, right? So the whole country can see that there's a crisis in Hammanskraal. Is there a way that we can mobilize resources to make sure that the community of Hammanskraal can go to court if they need to? That the community of Hammanskraal have the political muscle to call out whoever needs to be called out. So there must be a way that we can mobilize, particularly when it's something that's that specific and that urgent. You need to be able to draw in other civil society organizations, NGOs, resources, other community assets to come and bear down on that, and even private sector interests. But we must be able to mobilize ourselves as communities and societies when politicians or the state fail.
I wanted to go back to the from you. And can we run the timer as well? So you can see how much time we have on each session. Thank you. So the thing is, that matter of how much was highlighted because when we released several months ago. As we sit here, we have no idea when it has been done or necessarily satisfied that it should be as a useful constructive response to their concerns and that as much or not. Yeah.
Yes, because we've decided that all that needs to be done is there needs to be a show of a political response of some kind. So we don't have the details of Hammanskraal. That's my point I'm making, is that between civil society, local community actors, actually, in fact, also opposition political parties and the media. We need the details of what's happening in Hammanskraal to be publicized, to be made popular, so that we can then hold people accountable on the details. And where intervention is needed, that can be done through the law, that can be done through the media, that can be done through political will. We can then lean into that and make sure that those things happen. And I say this because people are not disengaged in general. So people mobilize, and the Makana situation will tell you that. South Africans in communities, we are organized in different ways and we are engaged with ourselves, but we are disengaged from the system. So the system needs to be clearer, more accessible, less opaque, so that we know what it is that we can ask for, we can lean into, we can know what resources we need in order to make things work for us. Right now, we have a lack of information, and that is disempowering us, but we are not disengaged. The system is locking us out.
Okay. Madam Ruti, John, your view, I mean, what can people do, active citizenry do? And I'm going to cite an example. We have on one hand, they're sitting side by side. Mid-Val, we're told they're doing pretty well, or relatively well. Immediate neighbors, Mfuleni, not so good, and that's been going on for a while. What's the difference between the civil society in Mfuleni and in the Mid-Val and the citizenry there compared to their counterparts in the Mid-Val?
Yeah. I think what Tessa is a very, very crucial team, the public participation within the running of the municipality is very crucial. We cannot underestimate how important that is. But now we're sitting with, and I understand when she says we are very engaged in our own way, but I must also say that, you know, a lot of our people are very despondent. There's a lot of hopelessness in the communities. And you know, the only time that you see the community actually rising up and say we want to do something is when there's a march on the streets. And actually that is not even helping that much to solve the issue. And that's why for me it is so important that the civil society and the organizations, the non-governmental organizations that are in the community, they must facilitate a process where the communities are empowered, because it's a lack of that information. How do we engage? What is the rules of engagement when we want to see change happening in the municipalities? And this is what we have experienced in Senegal, where we had a situation that was so dire, but then you had a communities that came together and says, we do have a responsibility to do something about what is happening here in this community. And that was obviously led by the civil society. So the engagement and the involvement of civil society, empowering communities to have a say and to give a direction as well in the decision-making in this local government is very important. And we cannot underestimate that.
Right, we have a roving microphone. If you want to comment or raise an issue with us, please do so. Raise your hand so I can get the microphone to you. And we also will be sharing the comments and questions with the online audience who are talking to us in the background and will raise their issues, comments with us. Who wants to go first? Yes, sir. Let's give you the microphone. Huh?
Good morning, everybody. Sam Marshall from Social TV. I just wanted to ask the role of technology because everybody's kind of in that space. And then we ran a project at Molotani where we taught young kids how to film their own production skills. And then we asked them to come up with stories that affected Soweto. And it was amazing how young people aged between the age of 15 and 18 highlighted and started telling those stories and started talking to other kids. So for example, one of the things that was quite shocking was that there was a very strong young female entrepreneurship program in Soweto. And one of the young girls wanted to talk about that. There was a young kid who wanted to talk about, for example, what happens when you steal or rob a family that's already in financial distress, the knock-on effect. And these were kind of the things that young people were focusing on. So the role of technology, and then also if we talk about active citizenry, shouldn't we have young people in that discussion? I'm nearly 50, and so I think young people are a lot more mobilized. They have conversations in different spaces, and they generally are the people that at the current moment, they really care. So where do technology and young people fit in these conversations? Because no disrespect to anybody, but I don't see a young person here.
Okay, good comment.
Is that because I'm the youngest person here?
It's an assumption.
No, look, I think that's a very solid point to share and a very important question to ask. And you often go to dialogues and spaces like this, and you find that question in some iteration is asked is, where are the young people in the room? And I think it's a function of many things, not deliberate in any way, but there is a big absence to note here. What you were pointing out about the Soweto situation is quite fascinating because it's the biggest evidence that given the tools, anything is possible. And one of the biggest challenges right now is that the tools just are so inaccessible to so many people. This idea of community storytelling and digital story, empowering community members to capture, record, and articulate their own experiences in their own ways with the same mechanisms that the rest of the world is currently doing is actually a very fascinating and important aspect of giving credence to our democracy and giving space for it to grow a bit further. How we include them, because I'm also very conscious of the fact that young people are not a homogenous group. And I always advocate for the fact that each context differs as to how you engage that specific category of young people. What is impacting the community of Soweto is not necessarily the same as the community of Khayelitsha or the community of Mlungisi Township. There may be commonalities, but they are not always the same. And what then needs to happen is in developing mechanisms of sharing those tools, they have to be responsive to the specificity of the stories to be told, the desire to tell those stories, and what is really propelling that group of people, be it young people or otherwise, to advocate for something they believe is important. Now that takes time and commitment. I'm not always sure that there is space for that, and yet we must still make it. So not really an answer, I guess, but really to affirm a lot of the parts that you were touching.
Not really. Briefly, you can comment, yeah?
The thing for me is, with all due respect, I disagree.
Okay.
I run a social impact news platform, and all we do every day for the last 11 years is follow NGOs into communities, tell their stories. We at every airport in the country, we speak to over 20 million people. I think we do, with all due respect, operate on old information. And this idea that young people, in Soweto, for example, you've got 21 kids, different backgrounds, but the commonality is technology, storytelling, and wanting to advocate that. Tembisa exactly the same. Every this past weekend, I was in the Free State, through Senekal, through Harry Smith, with an NGO doing work on the ground. This idea that our stories are so different, so unique, and so, to be honest with you, it's crap. Because the truth is, when you travel through the community, for example, in one of the towns there was no water, right? And if you speak to those community members, they actually have the solutions, they have the ideas. We've complicated the mechanism of delivery and engagement. And even the smart ones do it too. The people that are compassionate, the NGOs I speak to, they've complicated that mechanism themselves as well.
Okay, well, I think, it's a point noted, and the colleagues from Kagiso Trust are noting it and can take this conversation further.
Can I just also answer that question in part before we go on, so we don't get mixed up in the weeds?
Yeah, I'm also
That's
being
fine.
troubled by the timer, but go
I'll
ahead.
keep it
Yeah.
short. So 3 roles of tech. Comms, as you've pointed out, and I think the telling of stories of grassroots activism in this country will help us break through the idea that the country is not mobilized. The second one is the learning, and we can create toolkits of learning and toolkits of mobilization. And as you said, they can be standardized so that they can be used at local level in the ways that are different, but we need to create more toolkits of learning. And then the third one is mobilization. And there are 2 examples of mobilization I wanted to share that are tech related. One is Amandla.mobi. Amandla.mobi does something really powerful with USSD technology, not smartphone technology. They run petitions and polls with grassroots communities, and they've got now in the hundreds of thousands of people on imandla.mobi. And so when they want to do something that is around tax or VAT or any other number of the things that they've done, they're using USSD technology to get people to sign petitions all across the country. The second one is an organization called Mobilize, which is COVID comms, the comms agency that has moved now into a broader space. But what they were able to do with vaccinations during the COVID period is they got 100 young people who never have met each other to take one toolkit that was a 3-minute video and an app and go out there and do on their own terms with 1,000 Rand each, vaccination information sessions and getting people to vaccinate. So now you've empowered these people all across the country to do similar work, but in different contexts. And I think we're underutilizing that. The power to mobilize this country can happen through those kinds of things, even with the data constraints, because you can do a lot of offline platforms as well.
Thank you, Tessa. And Paul?
Yeah, thanks, panel. Interesting discussion. A lot of the things that came up, I think if anybody in a reasonable management or executive position would think about those solutions. So my question is twofold. If these things are reasonably obvious to those who sit down and think about them for a little bit, what else is at play that's a barrier? Because I don't think these things are that difficult to arrive at these conclusions. So I think we mustn't forget to deal with the real problem. And so that's one question. And the second question is to John. So, because I know the Makana situation, what is the catalyst for cohesion in communities and civil societies that in your particular case, because yours was something quite unique and could have been catastrophic. And so what was the catalyst for that change? What did it require for people to see a different perspective to what was expected to be the outcome of the Senegal situation? Thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay, yes, thank you, Paul, for that question. I think, we also have Dr. Giel Baker here. He was very much involved in the, the initial movement there in Senegal. And I think what was for me the most catalyst, it was when that conflict happened in Senegal. The only thing that helped us to transform that conflict into something positive that can unite the community, it was that for the first time, I think, in a small town like Senegal, and obviously with all of the towns, we had a common problems. We had common issues that affects both communities. And in the case of Senegal, we decided to say, okay, let's not just focus on the things that divides us, but let's focus more on things that bring us together. And we started identifying what I called unity projects. And unity projects was what are the things that affect both of us? And in our case, it was the potholes. We have a road that connects Senegal and Matwabing, which was making very difficult for both communities to actually reach one another. And also we had a problem with service delivery in terms of the sewer spillage and the filthy and the dirt that was all over in the town, the municipality failing even to cut the grass. And these are the projects that we united around. And as we came together, because if you say to somebody, what is your issue? What is something that really affects you? You actually talk into the heart. And when you say, let's co-create, let's bring solution to that, and then people come together and they say, yes, I want to get involved. And that's how we got the whole community together, because we were touching things that that mattered for both communities.
So who's the we?
The we is a critical mass that had to be created. And as I said, Professor Giel is also here, he can attest to that, because in the community, you always have to, you need those people that can lead the way and say, you know, this is the way to go. So in our case, it was a group of leaders, myself and others, that is made up of some of the political leaders and some of the religious leaders, and it was not something. It was a purely citizens who are concerned about their communities, and we started as a few group of people. But once the whole community sees that there are people who are taking responsibility and they're stepping up, and then the community came behind us. So the we was the different key leaders within the communities that managed to have a dialogue and agree and say, this is the direction we need to chart forward.
Thank you. Well, if you want to comment, please comment. I'm still going to give at least each table an opportunity to make a contribution to this discussion. Whether it's a reflection on what we spoke about, but also give us an idea of what you think the way forward should be. Because all of us here in this room can tell a lot about problems at municipal level. Some ideas have been put forward here to improve the situation going forward. So I'm going to go table by table, individual by individual. Those who've raised your hands, I'll give you the opportunity. But I would like each table to have something to say. Are you covered for that? Or you need additional support? You don't need additional support. Because okay, let's go back. They will come to this table because the opportunity has been there, and then go that way, and then I'll give the panelists a minute each to wrap it up for us.
Thank you very much. Hi, John. Nice to see you. Giel Becker. I'm actually from the University of Pretoria, but I grew up in Senekal, and that's why my family, mother still lives there. That's why I was involved in forming SMCF. But I don't actually want to talk about that. I would like to first of all say to Tessa, whatever you said today must be recorded. Where's our media guy there? And put it on TikTok, please. I fully agree and support.
I agree. Yeah.
I think you touched the essence of what we have to do. And this morning I read something on Facebook. One guy said, if rugby unites us, what divides us? Now, if I listen to the comments made by Sia Kolisi and says, we did it for South Africa, our country is going through so many challenges. It was basically a repeat of 4 years ago. So they're just repeating the same thing. And that's why I say if we don't change things now, in the next election, it's just going to carry on. And I think one of the biggest problems is that poor delivery gets rewarded. Now, I'm in the project management field. I do projects, so I look at technical things. I'm an engineer. So I got to the conclusion that government tries to solve technical problems through social engineering. You need technical engineering to solve technical problems. So all these kind of policies and stuff is working against that. I looked at especially school delivery. I've built schools in my life. Last year, Gauteng Department of Education was supposed to build 40 schools. They only built 4. What happened to the MEC of Education?
Nothing.
He becomes the Premier. And if you want to look at problems in Swane, there it is. Interference on things that is technically solvable, but it is a social and political problem. So we have the opportunity to change things, and we have to change it next year. There's no question about it. We have to change the complete political system. Otherwise, we can sit here again after 4 years with the World Cup. Yep. Again. And what will Sia Kolisi say? I guess he will be captain again. Our country is going through tough times. We have to change that. I just saw Rio there from Salga. He's driving with his Springbok shirt on. The Springboks are landing now, so I'm speculating, but I wanted to ask you, where is Salga in this? We've worked on towns, not only Senekal, I go to other towns. Salga is nowhere to be seen. Nowhere. I asked them, how many municipalities have you inspected? You know where the offices are? No, we don't know where the offices are. But that's your job. So if you don't do your job, you must go. Get somebody else in there. So, Mr. Barkley, you've got a lot of work on you. You've got a lot of things to do. And we're looking up to Kochta because that's the essence. How many people are doing how many inspections at which municipalities every day? How does the report look like? Are the people competent? I train many people at the university in municipalities. Then I go back and nothing's happening.
What?
So anyway, that is my comments. I will give somebody else. But
Sure,
thank you. Please be on TikTok.
I'll come back to you, but can we go to this table and then we go to, okay, that table, this one, that one, then we come back here.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tim, and good morning. Peace More from the South African Human Rights Commission, and thanks to Kagiso Trust for inviting us. I think what I wanted to say has been captured, but I just wanted to echo maybe the sentiments of Thomas Sankara, who said that there comes a time in life when we have to turn our backs from the old formulas. So I think what our colleagues have alluded to here is that there are a lot of assumptions that were made when the local sphere of government was established. For instance, I think Tessa spoke about it. Maybe it's time now, because I heard about the professionalization, but it's mainly on the administrative side. Maybe we need to look at actually the political side, because I think last year a report came out that about 300 councillors in KZN do not have the ability to read or write. Yeah. And those are people who are in charge of budgets amounting to billions. So what does that say? I mean, are they able to articulate? Are they able to hold the administration to account if they cannot even read and write? So we actually need to start looking at those things, and we also need to looking at reviewing the finances. I mean, 9% of the division of revenue goes to local government, but actually local government is at the epicenter of service delivery. So what are we saying? 90%, I mean, almost 90% is going to both provincial and national. So will they be able to actually generate sufficient funds to be able to deliver on the promises or on their obligations? So there is a lot that we need to do, but ultimately we just have to look at the policy designs, and some of them that were made when the white paper on local government was developed, and ascertain whether is it fit for purpose, or is it now time to actually review and invent a future that is bright for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's come to the table here, and then the next table, that table, and come back here.
Thank you. My name is Tsolo from YES, the Youth Employment Service. I think, in this discussion and in most other discussions I hear, we're always complaining about the behavior of politicians. So a lot of the problems, I think, that are in the country have to do with the types of incentives that people in positions of political power find themselves facing. And so when you look at how they behave, when they remove municipal managers, they do this or they do that. And we talk about the system. Well, I think the political system is producing the results we're seeing. And I don't think we're going to see different results unless we fundamentally change the political system, and in particular, the incentives in the system, the kind of behavior that it incentivizes. And I think now we seem to have an intractable problem, because to change the political system, we need the politicians, right? That's how the system works. So you can't change the political, only the politicians can change the system. But they voted, and I know we say we, at some point, I was definitely old enough to be active, but I can't remember being properly consulted about the political system. But anyway, we've got this system that has created a restaurant for politicians, and now we expect the politicians to vote to shut down the restaurant. So we've got a little bit of a problem, but I think it is solvable through active citizenry. But we have to bring the pressure to bear on the politicians in a way where they realize that, in fact, it may best serve their interests, because if they have to come to that conclusion, we have to put pressure in a way that they believe that it has come to a point where it's in their interest to actually do something about it. Right? But they won't do it unless it really is. And it will only really be in their interest if they realize that the citizens are demanding it. Right? So we have, I think, to think about campaigns of the citizenry for changes to the political system so that we can redesign the system in a way that may achieve different results.
Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Colin Ramule. So Salga is here. Salga is in every corner of the country. We were supposed to be many here, but we are actually engaging with municipalities. You know, one thing that I want to talk about, when I go through our usual visit in municipalities, we seem to find a space where old age systems are being we impose new systems on top of systems that are already existing, instead of building into those systems that we find in those spaces. Can I give you an example? We have traditional leaders in other municipalities, and in cities like Swan, we don't. But we find that the legislation is the same. So instead of our councillors and municipal officials actually becoming innovative, plugging into what they find in those spaces to come up with a unique kind of development in a particular space, we try to emulate what eThekwini would do in a village in Northwest, let's say in Itsobota. But if we allow Itsobota to, and I think councils are supposed to be doing that, and they're not doing that enough, that if they're in Itsobota or if they're in Mpumalanga, and they've been existing before local government, what can they get actually tap from their past to plug in and maybe relate it with what the legislation and policies want, so that we didn't actually trying to delete what has been there, but we build on it using our present constitution and legislation. That's my take. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Can we bring the microphone to the table here in front, and then
Good morning. Thank you, Tim. Rurik Makeza, a general question to the panel, maybe more specifically to you, Saki. I was born in Grahamstown, doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Makanda, and I was down there for a funeral in June this year. And as a young kid, I used to run through the town, used to have a lot of fun playing just behind Rusty Arch of the University on those lawns back then for the white people, now for our people, all of South Africa, as Sia says. And having heard what Tessa said, all of us seem to be pretty clued up as to what is broken. I'm curious to know, using Grahamstown as an example, I think of that road going from New Street into the university. I think it's called Prince Alfred Street. Yeah. I tried to drive there, couldn't drive. I was in a rented car and there were so many potholes, it was raining. I had to literally crawl down the road. I wanted to go visit my family on the other side of town the evening. My dad said, rather don't, call your cousin Saul. I said, why? He said, no, Saul's got a 4x4. You can't drive there with that little rented car of yours. My question, to the point that Tessa made, what is that practical playbook? What did Grahamstown Makanda do? What is Makanda doing to change a broken municipality, to change a broken town? And how do we use that with the wisdom of what Tessa has said to create a playbook that can be implemented to do some of those very practical things so that we can start drinking the water that comes out of our taps, or to take the risk to drive to our families at night. Thank you.
And then we take one comment at that table at the back, and then we come here. From then, we'll wrap it up with the panelists.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and just thank you to Kagiso for this wonderful breakfast. I think it's really a conversation that is needed on a much broader scale. My name is Estelle Orton. I'm from South Plan, and we involved together with Kagiso with the piloting of the small town regeneration strategy where we are piloting the strategy in 3 towns and in 3 scenarios across South Africa. And one thing that we have seen is that, as rightfully said this morning by Saki and some of the attendees, is that every small town, every community is so completely different and the dynamics are so completely different. But one of the things that we have seen and that I'm quite passionate about is that we as citizens have not taken up our role as was given to us in the Constitution to be active citizens and to hold people accountable that is in power. And one of the things that we are doing is we're sitting back and even not partaking in elections, we're sitting back not partaking in some of these IDP conversations. And yes, being a town planner, I do agree, some of those are just a tick box exercise. But there is, at this moment, we need to get our hands dirty. And we need to get to a point where we stop talking about stuff and where we start implementing stuff and start doing stuff. And how do we do that? Now, I would want to hear from the panelists as well as how would they suggest we do that. But one of the things of how we are looking at it in the small town regeneration strategy and the piloting process specifically is built around the radical collaboration model that was used by Kagiso successfully in other scenarios, and we're using this now in the strategy and testing it and building upon it, where we are saying, how do we get our politicians, our officials, and our community into the same room to work together towards the same goal? How can we come in and make sure that everybody leave their own egos alone and start working and co-develop and work towards the same goal? And that is something that we can't get rid of if we don't have hard conversations as communities. We need change, we need it now. And the only way that we're going to get that change is if we start at a ground level. And part of this is educating our citizens as well in terms of what their role and responsibility is. But not just educating it, that when I start actively doing stuff. And I think that is something important, that we have these big conversations, but where do we start? What is the practical steps that we need to take to move these things forward, so that it's that we stop talking, but that we start doing? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I wish we could start somewhere, but we'll hear from the panelists. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to have a word, and then the panelists, let's talk about the way forward, right? After a comment from here, can you give us the microphone? I think we've had the gist of the questions, right? So we do not have to respond to specific questions, but just pull them together and give a broad sense of how we think we can move forward successfully together. And maybe before you say anything, I'm told our online audience, have they said anything? Are they saying anything? Is there something that we need to raise from them? I haven't seen anything on screen, neither have I been given an indication. Do we have any? Oh, okay. Well, go ahead, man. I'll read it.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I have a question. I want to ask who is actually taking a decision in the motion of no confidence for removing the mayor. The motion of no confidence for removing the mayor in the council. Who's taking part in that? Because from what I've seen before is that you will find only the councillors voting for the motion of no confidence, and then I'm asking myself if only the councillors are taking part in this, and then you will also realize that even those councillors, they have their agenda in removing the mayor. But from us, the community, we will be aware that the mayor is doing the job. The mayor has been doing has been doing the visit to the township and doing the groundwork, but then within no time, then we will hear that there is a motion of no confidence going around regarding the mayor. So who specifically must get involved in that motion of no confidence?
And then, okay, so go ahead.
And then my second question is that as much as we hear that the ward councillors are being elected by the community, of which from the past years, I've also realized that it is not 100%, is not 100% true, because you will sleep knowing that as the community you've gathered and then you elected this person, and then the next morning or the next 2 days you find out that that person has been removed. You will never know who made that decision, because you were there when that person was elected. So it is not 100% sure, 100% true that the ward councillor is being elected by the community. And what must we do as the community to rectify that? Thank you so much.
Thanks, ma'am. And then from the online audience, Tabiso Ratsomo says, what changes professionals when they get into the government space? Because the reports from State Capture indicate that very qualified professionals, up to municipal managers, graduates of reputable business schools, colleges, behaved contrary to the rules and ethics of their professions. What transforms such individuals once they get into Salga and other government spaces? Herman says we have to focus on our commonality as human beings and see our diversity as an opportunity to learn from each other and to complement each other to build a better South Africa. And he goes on to say, we are all part of the political system, therefore we have the power to change the present system. Thanks to everybody and to your inputs, or for your inputs rather. We have to conclude, unfortunately, so I'm not asking for specific responses to specific questions, but to overall thoughts from the panelists. Maybe I should go online and check if Rio is there, Noluchungu, to comment, and then come back to the panelists that we're with here. Rio, are you there? Okay, he's not there. All right, where do we start? Let me see. Let me throw my bones and tell him. I think I want to give the last word to Dorian Buckley, because he's in the system, and I mean it respectfully. Whatever we're saying it more from a wishful point of view. You are somebody we must hold accountable to what we're saying here, right? So I'll go line by line by this, just 2 minutes each. How do we take all the sentiments we've heard here and the other issues that have been raised, including what we saw from the Mentimeter, and make them come alive and help propel a movement forward to a better functional municipal system? Tessa, let's start with you.
Yeah, I want to answer your questions quite directly, and then just brief comments. So in terms of the system does actually allow us, and only us as voters, to vote in the ward councillor and to vote for a new ward councillor. What the system doesn't allow us to do is a recall. And that's what we actually need to institute. The community must be able to recall a councillor. And in fact, a political party with a ward councillor should not be able to recall a ward councillor. What's happening there is political culture is allowing for that, because the ward council is allowing himself to be removed by a party that actually doesn't have the right to remove him. So it's a political culture issue. So what we really need to do is double down on two things. One is that our ward committees must work more effectively so that communities keep involved with their ward councillors. But number two, we must ask for a recall clause. And again, that can be a national government election issue. And this goes to my broader comments. National government elections, the issue of the way we stratify government, manage the spheres of government, and manage the local can be sorted out by getting the right kind of national leaders, looking at the legislation and looking at the policies. We must get that right in this election. 2024 fixes that for us if we do it properly. The second thing is, in terms of some of the practical things I think we need to do, EPWP and CWP programs, public works programs in general, have been underutilized in this country enormously. The kind of work that was done in Senegal should actually have become an EPWP program, where government then says, okay, there's a group of community activists, there's somebody in the community who wants to help fix this issue. How do we make sure that that gets resourced in a way that there's some sort of support from the government, as opposed to having these civil society groups and movements having to go look for an international donor, and then they're told tomorrow you're doing the bidding of the international donor. It's only because there's no government resources that are helping communities who want to get active to do the work of active citizenry. So if we move that EPWP program from social development into Kochta, I think we might actually have some sort of success in terms of supporting active citizenry with resources. The third thing is young people. Number one, we are going to have to recruit young people who are graduates into the public service, but we're going to have to do it on the guarantees of keeping the politicians out of their faces. But the second thing is that we must bring in young people with track records. And contrary to popular belief, young people have track records. They have track records of public service in their communities. They have track records of working in private sector organizations. By the time somebody is 30 years old, they could have had 10 years worth of experience. Please let's stop telling each other that young people have no experience. In fact, old people have too much bad experience. And so your number of years can work against you. And the final thing I will say is consequences matter. And we must manage for consequences. And those consequences are not going to come from coalitions of political parties and politicians. They're going to come from coalitions of society. We need to create more coalitions of society that are politicized. And so the final thing I'll say in a sentence is we must depoliticize the bureaucracy and repoliticize the citizens if we're going to fix this thing in the next 3 years.
Thank you, Tessa.
Yes, Nere Tim. I think I want to repeat also what I've been saying. If you look at the municipality, for me, it's always a reflection of the community. And that's why I said earlier on, if you don't get it right from the grassroots, empowering the communities to identify those leaders that are capable, you're going to have the same problem over and over there. And that's why if I come back to, by the way, she's my wife, beautiful wife. If I come back to her question or contribution, that's why now the independent candidates is so attractive to many communities for the simple reason that the party politics doesn't allow that power for the community to recall these kind of leaders that are going on rogue. But if you have an independent candidacy, those people, those leaders have been, number one, elected by the community, and they are responsible directly to those communities, and they can be recalled. And I think for us to see that change really happening, we will have to empower the community. We need to have these conversations with the community, and then I think we will be able to resolve the problem we're sitting with in municipalities.
Thank you very much. Second.
Thank you very much. I won't be too long. I do want to specifically respond to the question about Makanda that you asked. And again, to frame it in the context of it's an active challenge. There's still active work that needs to be done to improve the conditions of the city. But if there are two things that are really, really powerful that I think are shining gems, it's a very engaged civil society across different sectors and thematic focus areas that is looking to plug into helping the immediate community around them. And the second thing is there's been a growing birth of community capacitation as opposed to organizational capacitation. Now there's a growing energy to just train individual community members, capacitate them to articulate themselves a bit better and further. And the hope is that as these organizations start to work together a bit more and you've got more capacitated community members, we can start putting forward really meaningful and tangible change. But the journey itself will take some time. I'd never want the world to think that things are all dandy, but there are many incredible stories to tell from that context of the city. In terms of some of the bigger questions, I think the only general thought I could put out is that yes, absolutely, we need to start bringing people together and having conversations on a national scale, and collaboration has to be a critical key. I do think that a missing ingredient that's often not spoken about is an acknowledgement of failures when you initiate that space. is so fundamentally important to building trust with the partners in there. If I have failed to render services and we are now calling me into a space to work with me to fix services, it does seem quite incumbent on me to acknowledge, listen, I have not been able to render it effectively. I need to render quite explicit where I have not showed up and my willingness to work with you to build better from there. And the last thing, and I think Tessa touched on it very well, this idea of consequence management. Dr. Derek, I'm going to put this question. It's a question I tried to awkwardly ask you a second ago, but I do think that we do need to start seeing very tangible examples, very accessible examples of consequence management. And I can question to close off that I put to you is from Copter's perspective, from your experience, do you believe that we've got an effective and rigorous enough consequent management system, as you spoke about protocols and procedures, that can actually lend credence to citizen concerns and turn those concerns into meaningful action and change? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let me start with the last question first. Maybe I should just respond to that. Firstly, I think there is a proper system for dealing with consequence management and how you apply it. But those people that are entrusted with the implementation thereof lacks the skills to do it. So the systems and processes are there. We've seen what happened in the past. Various research have shown that South Africa is very good at policy development, but they're very poor at implementation. We've seen that in all the local municipalities. National government give us grants at the local level. Municipalities were not built to accommodate the numbers that you currently have, which means you need to ensure infrastructure delivery. What happens? That grants go back to national because we lack the technical capability to implement. So from a local government perspective, let's just go back to the basics. Can we deliver services? Those that's entrusted with doing refuse removal, let them do refuse removal. Let's go back to where we say, if you are entrusted with governing, then just govern. If you are entrusted with overseeing the financial governance of the institution, do that. Can we get our councillors to do what they do? The communities, we've seen what has happened now. We're heading to the elections next year. There is an endless number of engagement in municipalities and in local. And why have we not done that 2 years ago? Let's allow the IDP in a municipality, if you do proper community engagement, that is your governance tool for the municipality to implement. Allow the municipality to implement, and if they don't, let's hold them accountable. That's the only way we can get back to basic service delivery and bring back the right skills at the right time, and the right time is now. Not 3 years, not 5 years, but now. Thanks.
Yeah. No, thanks. Thanks very much. And I think we have come to the end of the proceedings, but somehow I feel an urge to go to one question. And Tessa, you raised it very sharply. I mean, one of the beautiful things about South Africa is that we can have these meetings of this nature all the time, if you want. We can talk, repeat ourselves, but things start from somewhere. But does the system allow for what Dr. Dorian Buckley said now? I mean, let's do this, let's do that, which is great. Question is, why is it not being done? You know, does the system, just a brief comment from you, does the system as is allow for all of the things that we wish to see happen?
Yes, it's called democracy. And by virtue of that, we as citizens, we as voters, we as community members do have power, but we have neglected that power. And somebody mentioned it earlier about the politicians are not going to vote to change systems. So we must find ways to use the systems that we have right now to get our hands on the levers of power to change the systems in the ways that they need to be changed. But there are two things that we absolutely can do right now. The first thing is we must politicize ourselves and start having political conversations in this country. We are having many technical conversations, but we are whispering political conversations. What kind of politicians do we have? Where are the political problems? What are the political issues that are on the table? And how do we get more of the people who are willing to do the work on the ground without power into power? And that means somebody is going to have to get out of power. Who do we want out of power? Who do we want into power? The second thing is then, once people are in power, what do we want them to do with that power in terms of our political systems, and where are some of the reforms that are needed? And that's an electoral reform conversation we're going to have over time that goes beyond independent candidates. But the point is that political problems require political solutions. And political solutions, we've seen it 35 years ago in this country. We had a political mobilization of society to create a political solution about who gets into power and who gets out. We can do that again.
All right. Well, maybe that's what we needed to hear. Who knows? Thank you very much. And thanks to the panelists. I appreciate it. Let me also remind you that we ran the Radical Collaboration series. The videos are available, including this one. It's going to be edited and packaged nicely. It will be available on the Kagiso Trust webpage. You go to the local government or municipal government. Which one is it? Governance, right? I must get the governance. I must get the governance right. So you go to the local governance page, and then you'll find the content and some of the discussions that we've had regarding this very important topic. And it's not just to kill time that we come together to discuss these issues. They are obviously critical. All of us have got first-hand experiences of what is wrong with our municipalities. But personally, at a certain level, I sometimes lose confidence and hope or whatever. And I say, well, as long as we've got the system going this way, it exists for itself, and we're supporting it. But I'm given confidence from these deliberations that indeed things can and hopefully will get better. Let me call on Dean Zoitao to come forward and give us the vote of thanks and closing remarks. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have such a rich and illustrious history of working with local government. I don't know an experience. I don't know if it is the wrong experience that Tessa is referring to. So I can have a lot to say. However, let me limit myself to the concluding remarks before there is a changing of the guards of electricity. I was warned at 12 hours. As we conclude this enlightening gathering focused on local governance and active citizenry and citizenship, it is crucial to reflect on the Kagiso Trust vision we hold dear, the pursuit of a prosperous, peaceful, equitable, and just society. At the heart of this vision lies our unwavering commitment to eradicating poverty and creating a better future for all. One of the primary reasons we choose to be actively involved in government, local government, governance in particular, is to fulfill our mission in addressing poverty. For the poor, ladies and gentlemen, the indigent and the marginalized, government becomes their refuge, a protective shelter that provides the essential services they so desperately need. I always say that the rich and the wealthy always have a way out of many tricky situations. The poor don't. It is our duty to ensure that government, especially local government, remains a dependable source of support and hope for those who rely on it. So for those in local government now, and also who are going to be in local government in the future, be warned, Kagiso Trust will never leave you alone for this particular reason. A strong and accountable local government is the cornerstone of our endeavors. We recognize that our vision to become a reality, our local government must possess the capacity and competence to deliver high-quality services to its citizens. Accessibility, responsiveness, and efficiency are the pillars upon which we build a foundation of trust between the government and its people. As we bring this informative and empowering local governance breakfast seminar to a close, we would like to take a moment on behalf of the Trust to express our sincere appreciation to each and every one of you. Your presence and active participation have truly made this event a resounding success. Today, we had the honor of hosting esteemed representatives from the government, civil society, and business sectors, all of whom came together to discuss the vital topic of active citizenry. This seminar served as a culmination of our local governance campaign, and your insights and contributions have been invaluable in shaping the discussions. We would also like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our expert facilitator, Mr. Tim Modise. Can we cheer him up, please? Fantastic job. His guidance and expertise have ensured that we had fruitful discussions and gained deeper understanding of the importance of active citizenry in local governance. To further expand on the knowledge and resources shared during this seminar, we encourage you to visit our website. We have made the content generated from the local governance campaign available on our website, accessible through the link displayed on the screen. Hopefully you display the link on the screen. As we depart from the gathering, may we carry the knowledge, insights, and inspiration we have gained, and may we continue to work tirelessly towards the realization of our vision. Let us support and hold accountable our local governance, ensuring that they remain true to the fundamental principles of service fairness, and inclusivity. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to express our gratitude once again to all the participants, speakers, and contributors for making this event a success. Your commitment to the cause of active citizenry is inspiring, and we look forward to witnessing the positive impact it will have on our communities. It will be a great gesture if we would end this up by all rising and cheering to you, to the panel, to Tim, and to our rugby team. Can we cheer that up? Thank you very much. We hope to see you again. All the best.